Good morning, lovelies. I'm C.M. Alonji, fantasy author and content creator. Last week, we discussed my favorite paranormal tropes. So today we're talking about the 10 tropes that make me steer clear of the genre. I said it last week, I'll say it again. Paranormal is not my genre of choice, and it's usually because of these tropes. But before we get started, if you want to see a cafe latte book on the shelves, I'm going to be self-publishing Heart of Iron in 2025 and will need your help to do it. There will be a crowdfund campaign starting in February. You can sign up for my newsletter in the description or subscribe to this channel for updates. If you have no idea what cafe latte is, it is my TikTok series about a cafe run by fairies. It tends to be pretty fluffy, slice of life, a bit of hurt comfort. The book, Heart of Iron, it's actually going to be a bit more action-adventure and a little darker. Not sorry. Both are queer and full of crazy magical bullshit, so check out the links in the description. That's enough self-promo. To the tropes! Number 1. Monster Sexification. Maybe this is just my asexuality talking, but come on. Who the hell looked at this and thought that? I know some people like this type of thing. No shade to them. I don't kink shame here. I just don't want to see it everywhere. I usually go into paranormal for paranormal horror, meaning I'm looking to be scared, terrified, questioning the morality of humanity and our place in the universe. I don't want to be horny. There is a whole other side of the internet for that, and they usually have better search toggles. Number 2, mandatory romance. I respect the romance genre. I really, truly do. Just because it is not my cup of tea does not mean that I'm going to shit all over it or hate on the creators or say it's not a real writing, alright? My mother is literally a New York Times bestselling author of paranormal romance. I would be disowned. She also just dropped a brand new contemporary romance novel called Road Queens. Half of her profits are going to domestic violence shelters, so check it out. But I feel like paranormal has been so consumed by the romance genre, more so than any other genre that utilizes romance, that unless it is specifically a horror story, it is expected to be paranormal romance, and probably erotica, or at least a little spicy. And even if it is a horror story, you're still expected to have some sort of romance in there, ye old romantic subplot. Non-romantic paranormal stories are almost completely squeezed out of their own genre. Where am I supposed to find a story with ghosts or werewolves or vampires or fae that does not have some alpha jerk trying to play hide the salami in the couch with our hapless human protagonist? Nowhere! They don't exist! And I hate it! And if it's not horror, it's romance. And as much as I love horror, I hate that. I just want options. Yes, there is a romantic subplot in Heart of Iron, but it's queer. Queer romances get a pass because they are so rare, okay? It's sapphic, for those of you wondering. The main protagonist is non-binary and they crush on a lesbian witch hard. If you follow the TikToks, you know exactly who I'm talking about. Number 3, the love triangle. Just because the two alpha hunks are different species does not make this plot device any less painful. I get that some people like it, and if it's the core of the romance story, that's fine. I appreciate the marketing. I will stay clear, and I will recommend it to my friends who are into that type of thing. But so often, it is just a cheap trick to create more drama when you could get even more drama by tapping into the issues of the fantastical world that you've created. Just off the top of my head, a werewolf pack's old alpha dies and needs to elect a new one. And one of the major contenders is a guy who wants to go to war with the vampires, even though the old alpha spent literally decades securing a peace treaty with them. The werewolf main character, or the werewolf that the human main character is dating, your choice, has to run against this violent extremist, even though they don't think that they are alpha material. So in addition to the whole power struggle and threat of violence going on, we're also exploring their insecurity and disbelief that they can create any lasting positive change in the world. And that's not even touching on how the vampires might mess around with this whole thing, or the humans. Isn't that so much more interesting than which boy will I make out with today? Also, polyamory. It's a thing. Why does no one suggest it? And when people do suggest it, it always falls apart. Come on. Number 4, the alpha male bullshit. This one's usually prevalent in werewolf stories, even though that is not how real wolf pack structures work. The paranormal alpha male is all tough and stoic and possessive to the point of abuse. He's a bully to his pack and a domestic abuser to his partner, and we're supposed to want him? An alpha is supposed to look after their group and protect them, not beat them up for questioning their authority. Here is how real wolf structures work. The parents are in charge, and they look after their cubs. That's it. That's the story. Pack units are family units, so a real alpha male is the dad friend. They're the guy who always has snacks and meds in his backpack, tells the lamest jokes, and yes, will be the first to throw hands if you fuck with one of his kids. Hey look, I did not say that there could not be an element of violence or even sexiness to it. You can even make it the gruff dad friend if you want to keep some measure of antisocial behavior. I mean, that's basically Logan from X-Men. Turn him into a werewolf, done. And yes, the alpha female would be the mom friend. She's the one constantly reminding you to hydrate, gives you her shoulder to cry on when you go through a breakup, and then hits up the dad friend to help her find the asshole who broke up with you and put them through a world of pain. Make those two characters werewolves, and you already have a much more interesting and wholesome paranormal novel than most any other werewolf stories. I have given you conflict setting and a possible romantic pairing. Go nuts, writers. I'm not going to use any of it. Number 5, the whole mate thing. This is a big one. Werewolves, vampires, fae, everyone's got a mate, and they're all emotionally abusive to them. Super possessive, isolating them from all their other friends and family, dictating what they do and say and dress. Even the stories that do feature perfectly healthy relationships between destiny-determined mates, they still leave a bad taste in my mouth, and I'll tell you why. The whole idea is that there is only one person out there for you in the entire world, out of billions of people and however many other universes and realms you have in a paranormal or urban fantasy setting. Without this one person, you are incomplete, and any other romantic relationships you had before or after were not real or were a waste of time. Both of those ideas are wrong. You are a complete person with or without a romantic relationship. I'm not saying that romance is unimportant. I mean, it is to me, but I'm an aromantic asexual who wants nothing to do with that. The few times that I have tried to be in a romantic relationship, despite not feeling the romance, I was not happy, and that's a me thing. Romantic relationships are no more important than your family ties or your friendships or your community. In fact, I would argue that the romance is less important than any of that. You can live a full, happy life without romance. You cannot do that without friends or community. And just because your earlier relationships didn't pan out or they ended badly, that does not mean that they're unimportant or not real. Every relationship and dating experience you have helps you figure out who you are as a person. I mean, hell, they're what helped me figure out I was aro. Your high school prom date is just as valid as your first marriage, even if they're two totally different people with two different endings. Even if your first spouse or serious SO dies or you break up and you end up in a relationship with someone else, that does not mean that they're no longer allowed a special place in your heart. They helped make you who you are, and your heart always has room for more love. And finally, the cherry on top of this shit pile, what happens when one of the mates dies? You're saying that the survivor is bound to live a depressed half-life with no true joy? They're never allowed to enter another relationship, never allowed to heal? Oh, I feel so sorry for you. You lost your soulmate. I mean, yeah, it was rough, but this was also 20 years ago. I went to therapy, I mourned, I healed. Now I'm married to this other guy and we have 2 kids. It's great. You mean that you didn't wander the earth a tormented soul after the loss of your one true love? You heartless bitch. I just don't like it. There are too many icky implications on so many levels. Number 6, horror movie idiots. Obviously, this one is specific to paranormal horror. If you don't at least try to run away, call for help, effectively defend yourself, or otherwise avoid the fatal situation without a damn good reason, I can't root for you. They don't have to be Einsteins. I just need the character to have some common fucking sense and not paint a target on their back. And personally, there are few things scarier than having the characters make all the right moves, to think things through and handle it calmly and intelligently, and they still die. That's terrifying. Specific to paranormal horror, Oculus does smart hero very well. She does have a fatal flaw. She is far more determined to prove to the world that the mirror is indeed possessed and responsible for her parents' death, that she endangers herself and her brother, but that's a character flaw. That is arrogance and motivation wrapped together, not stupidity. And because of her flawed motivation, she spent 10 years researching the shit out of this thing and planning her revenge. It's great. She gives that monster a serious run for its money. And I know, possessed mirror, that does not sound scary. Trust me, it is. Number 7, do I bang you or eat you? The classic paranormal monster conundrum. You're sexually attracted to a human that you should be eating in a non-sexy way. What do you do? Hold up. Again, this might just be my arrow aceness talking. I don't experience sexual or romantic attraction ever at all. Especially to things that I want to turn into food, like chicken, salmon, and oysters. I have literally gone fishing for my dinner, and not once did I think, but I want to fuck that walleye instead. Now granted, in the paranormal genre, these characters that we're thinking about eating are humans, not animals. And humanizing and forming connections with people you initially hated or belittled or otherwise dehumanized is a really great story trope and can act as a really cool metaphor for your theme. I mean, hell, that's the whole emotional crux of my sci-fi novel, Citadel. So maybe take a similar approach as dogs. Some cultures don't see them as pets or companions. They're food. And that is horrifying to me as an American and a girl who grew up with dogs. Maybe there are different vampire groups with similar approaches. One group sees humans as nothing more than meat, cattle. There's your antagonist. A second group see us as pets. Nice to have around, but ultimately very condescending toward us. That one could have a romantic vampire-human pairing that ultimately implodes because the human realizes that the vampire does not see them as an equal. We're just an amusing pet to them. This one might actually be the most realistic, especially with vampires who are centuries old, who have seen the rise and fall of empires. What are we to them if not amusing playthings? But yet a third group might actually see us as equals, or at least people. And that's where you can put a functional love story. If you want a redemption arc, you can even have the vampire start in one of those other two groups and gradually work their way here. I guess this is also where the vampire vegans would hang out. And while there would be plenty of fun ones who are actually cool, there's always that one who's just such a condescending bitch. Number 8, Immortal statutory rape. That is, the centuries-old vampire or fae is banging the teenager. And it's always a teenage girl, because it's not like women are attractive after their 20s. I don't want to say it's all Twilight's fault, but it certainly didn't help. I mean, looking at you, Angel and Spike from Buffy the Vampire Slayer. This type of thing just perpetuates rape culture. It's an exaggeration of the idea of an older man grooming a young girl for sex, and then usually dumping her when she gets too close to 30 and starts utilizing critical thinking skills. Any vampire story that has a centuries-old woman going after a teenage boy usually frames it as a horror story, as they should. Because on some fundamental level, we do understand that that ain't right, no matter who is what gender. They're pedophiles. End of story. And you can make that story work. It would be a gripping tale of psychological abuse and the fear the victim has that they'll lose their abusive lover when they get too old. So that's why they want to be a vampire, so they don't age. And then there's that cycle of trauma as they start killing and turning people. There is so much potential in these stories, and it never gets explored. Oh god, I still have 2 more tropes to go through. Okay, number 9. Why are all these vampires in high school? Other than the obvious I'm a sexual predator looking for my next victim thing. Again, you're 200 years old and you're hanging out with and having sexual relations with literal children. Maybe get a job. Also, you're learning the same things over and over again. For what? 1,000,000 high school degrees? That's only as good as one. If you're writing a vampire who is obsessed with school, put them in college. It doesn't matter how old or young they look, prodigies exist, and people often go back for higher degrees in their 30s, 40s, and 50s. No one raises an eyebrow at people who wander around the campus at 2 a.m. You can study literally anything you want in a far more interesting way if you fall in love with another student, at least they're an adult. On a related note, there are plenty of rapists for you to murder when you get hungry. Just act mildly drunk at a frat party. The only thing that you really have to worry about is the college tuition, and I think I just figured out the major flaw in this plan. Okay, so you might have to forge some government documents, but come on! Do you want 100 bachelor's, master's, and doctorates in a dozen different fields of study, allowing you to pursue literally any career? Or do you want to take the SATs for the 100th time? And number 10, sex slavery. That is supposed to be sexy. Sometimes the werewolf, vampire, or fairy in question will literally own a human being, and rather than treat this like the horrifying experience that human trafficking is, that's the love story. Slavery is a real thing that has continued in many forms to this day and ruins lives. Some people have a slavery kink, I get that, but that really only works if all parties are actually consenting to it and have the option to stop and leave whenever they want. That's not what's happening in these stories. These stories glorify slavery and the abuse that comes from it. It also irks me on a professional level because, again, this could be an amazing horror story that talks about the social issue of slavery and/or domestic violence and the struggle to escape, or the horror of no escape if you want to take that tone. There is real potential here. But no, it's just poorly written smut. Those are the top 10 reasons why I don't usually read paranormal. Remember to subscribe so you don't miss any Alonji or Cafe Latte news, and tell me your least favorite paranormal tropes in the comments. Cafe Latte compilations will resume next week, and the crowdfund campaign for Heart of Iron goes live on February 3rd. Bye, lovelies.